Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for this, how to and when to seek help. My name is Elisa Macris and I'm a business psychologist at Thrive, and today with me I have Joanna Scholze. Hi Joanna.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today.
So we have chosen this specific topic in consideration of Suicide Prevention Day, which is today. Hopelessness and loneliness are two very intense emotions that we can experience at any point in our lives. And if we don't acknowledge them or address how to cope with them in a healthy manner, it can lead to unhelpful thoughts or unhealthy coping strategies or even suicidal ideation or suicide. If this webinar brings up anything for you or a friend, please don't hesitate to contact support, either through your family or friends, your GP, employee assistance programs, or Samaritans. Support is out there for you, and if you need it, please do reach out. At the end of the session, we also have some signposting. So yeah, the topics that we will be covering today is what is loneliness and how does it affect us? The experience of loneliness at different stages in our life, how to cope with loneliness, and then we will go into hope, what is hope that it does, how to cope with it, and when to seek help. So belongingness is among the most fundamental of human emotions. It is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. For early humans, access to resources and communal knowledge increased the chance of survival. So people exhibited a natural tendency to form and resist the breaking of social connections. We are essentially social creatures. Our quality of life rests on the people that we connect with, and not just because we depend on them for food, clothing, and shelter. We thrive because of this, our psychological and even physiological well-being is negatively affected when we become socially disconnected. We seek to satisfy this deeply rooted need to belong that is independent from satisfying other basic needs. However, merely social contact is not enough. As I will explain later when I talk about being lonely in a crowd, relationships must also include a level of mutual caring and concern for one another. Loneliness is a prevailing experience, which every person has experienced at some point in his or her life. It is a complex set of feelings that occurs when people's social needs are not satisfied, and that drives individuals to seek the fulfillment of these needs. It is a subjective experience influenced by one's personality, life experience, and other situational variables. Loneliness results from an interaction of person factors as well as situational factors. This interaction is closely associated with the changing circumstances that we encounter throughout our lifetime, as I will mention later when I talk about loneliness throughout our lifetime. To determine, we must have a way to measure our social worth, let's say. Researchers had suggested that we have an internal gauge called the sociometer, which we use to constantly monitor the environment for changes in our inclusionary status. People feel lonely even when they live in heavily populated areas like London. In spite of being surrounded by millions of people, yet it is unclear why loneliness cannot be alleviated by high population density. Some theories are that people tend to disconnect themselves from others as a protective mechanism in heavily populated areas because equipment can be harmful to them physiologically and psychologically. It could also be that people exposed to crowded living conditions for a long period of time become defensive and hostile chronically. Lastly, loneliness is also contagious. When people come into contact with a large number of other people on a daily basis, the perceived loneliness will spread out rapidly. Therefore, the quantity of contact does not translate into the quality of contact. So as mentioned before, merely the social contact won't suffice. Relationships must also include a level of mutual caring and concern for one another. Social exclusion can have a powerful influence on our thoughts, feelings, and has depression, anxiety, and interpersonal hostility, increased vulnerability of health problems, suicidal ideation, and suicide. I will talk a bit about how both our mind and our body is affected by loneliness. Cognitive effects are those that concern our mind and mental processing. So social exclusion can produces a deconstructed state, and by more passive, lethargic, emotionally numb, and unwilling to control their impulses. This is also common in individuals who suffer from personal failure. It can also have an effect on our self-control. In general, people strive to direct themselves in a way that will reap the greatest rewards while avoiding consequences. However, self-control suffers with increased social isolation, and excluded individuals struggle to maintain this reward and cost balance. When people believe they will be alone in the future, they make self-defeating choices by procrastinating, engaging in less behaviors such as taking drugs, drinking alcohol, or eating unhealthy foods. This is also sometimes used as a way to escape their feelings of loneliness. However, we need to remember that excluded individuals are not unable to control their impulses, but instead are just unmotivated to do so. So later on, I will talk about coping with loneliness, and I will explain how merely the prospect of social inclusion can motivate a lonely individual to make better choices for themselves or even perform better in tasks. Loneliness also affects our antisocial and prosocial behavior. Often, socially excluded people view the innocent actions of others as either aggressive and respond in that corresponding manner. Rejection does more than lead individuals to passively give up. It alters their analysis of social events to actively undermine their interpersonal progress. On the other hand, it has also been found that people deprived of belongingness are more driven for future social contact than socially connected people. For instance, sometimes excluded individuals express anxiety compared to socially accepted people. Then there is the connection between emotion as well as physical pain brought about through social exclusion. Research has shown that some of the same neural regions that are activated when one is in physical pain also respond to social exclusion. For instance, the anterior cingulate, which is a neural structure that alarms us to threats in the environment, is also activated when our belongingness is threatened. We feel the same type of pain from physical injury as we do from social exclusion. This brings us back to the point earlier about the need to belong also being an evolutionary response for the need of survival. This is why the same neural networks in our brain is activated when we experience physical pain as well as emotional pain from social exclusion, as we need this social inclusion for survival needs as well. So loneliness throughout our lifetime. Changing circumstances, life events, and opportunities affect the way in which we experience, evaluate, and cope with life's demands. Loneliness is experienced at any age. The relationship between age and loneliness is a curvilinear one, whereby the young and the old are especially prone to feeling loneliness. As children, we sense we are alone when we discover that our parents are not all powerful or know everything about the world. As an adolescent, we discover our own mortality, and this intensifies our awareness of loneliness. Adolescence is a difficult period of life characterized by conflicts with parents, mood fluctuations, including extreme emotions, substance abuse, heavy reliance on peers, vulnerability to peer pressure, as well as some risky behavior. However, they lack sufficient self-knowledge, maturity, and life experience to fully experience growth and discovery, which comes along with feeling loneliness, which I will explain later when talking about loneliness in the elderly. During young adulthood, when we are in our 20s, in Western culture, we break away from our family and prepare ourselves for life vocationally, academically, and socially. Around the age of 30, many people experience a minor life crisis, questioning the essence of life and searching for the assurance about previous choices that had been made. During this stage in our life, the formation of close friendship and intimate relationship is vital to our healthy psychosocial development. Also, research has shown that the reported experiencing most acutely the pain and agony which loneliness at this age entails. Adults during their third to fifth decades often aim to reach the height of their careers and may experience the birth and growth and striving of independence of their own offspring. During this time, there are also physiological changes one experiences, such as going through menopause or declining vigor, strength, and youthfulness, as well as letting go of unrealistic aspirations and dreams. And then for the elderly, frequently suffer from a variety of chronic illnesses, death of a friend or spouse, and social isolation to varying degrees. On the other hand, in some cases, they have been reported to experience less loneliness, and when they do encounter its pain, they may evaluate it differently and thus reduce its influence on them. The elderly experience retirement, death of loved ones, and the deterioration of their physical health and at times cognitive functioning. However, when comparing themselves to their reference group, other seniors with similar losses and in a similar situation, they likely see it as a natural occurrence at this stage in life, and consequently they're able to regulate their emotion more effectively than younger people can. Loneliness and personality. So feelings of loneliness and social isolation can be enhanced by our own perceptions and one's shyness, as well as hostility. And comparing yourself to others can be a detrimental contributor to feelings of not belonging or not fitting in. So seeing other young adults who may be socially well supported, who may have achieved positions of power or prestige, socially desirability or marital and family harmony could lead to a self-attribution of social inadequacy and perceived social alienation. So comparing oneself is detrimental in those feelings that one might have. And this links back to how I was talking about adolescence and the maturity that one has and that one develops throughout our lifetime to develop this maturity to be able to understand emotionally and socially where you stand and compare yourself to others. These feelings of loneliness. One way we can cope better is by altering our perception and focusing on the positive. Through experiencing loneliness, there's often personal growth and discovery, including gaining deeper understanding and appreciation of oneself, increase in the values of one's friendship and social support, and the discovery of resources one has to cope with loneliness. Cognitive behavioral therapy and meditation can help us to re-evaluate our perceptions from unhelpful ones to more helpful ones. It can also help us in managing our emotions better to cope with the painful feelings that may arise when we experience this loneliness. Communication is key to helping us process our feelings, but also to remind ourselves of the social support we do have around us, which we might have overlooked. Research had found that young adult women in particular experience less pain because they openly express their emotions and support, while men tend to be more hesitant to express their emotions openly. There are individual differences in how willing or easy it will be for someone to communicate their feelings. However, even for those who it doesn't come easy, it's important to find just one person who you can do this with. If it is difficult for you to get your thoughts into words, it might help you to write a journal. This will help you to get a better understanding of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, as well as the events that surrounded them. The need to belong and potential for future social acceptance can also be an incentive and encourage us to better perform at certain tasks. Since socially excluded individuals have an unfulfilled belongingness need, the future acceptance should serve as a particularly strong incentive for improving self-regulation. Evidence has shown that when excluded people believe that a certain task is linked to social acceptance, they perform better on that task compared to other excluded individuals who believe that the same task is unrelated to social acceptance. This has important implications for therapy and motivation of individuals whose feelings of loneliness might have become more passive, lethargic, emotionally numb, or unwilling to control their impulses. Lastly, our mind has also a natural defense mechanism when dealing with the emotional pain of social rejection. This is also known as the unconscious coping response. As mentioned before, the body responds similarly to physically and socially painful events. When we are interpersonally rejected, we experience a numbness that temporarily protects us from the distressing emotional component of the event. Yet eventually, this anesthetic effect will fade away, increasing the chance that people will suffer from future emotional distress caused by the rejection. This coping response may help to shelter individuals from the emotional distress brought on by socially painful events. It may also provide a route through which excluded individuals can pursue and restore the social bonds with others. And lastly, just to re-mention, it is so important to find a network, a social support network you can communicate with and open yourself up emotionally and be able to be vulnerable with, as this is one of the key aspects of helping our mental well-being and reducing these feelings of loneliness. We will now proceed to the second part of this webinar, which is focused on the feelings of hopelessness. So feelings of sadness and emptiness are an integral part of experiencing loneliness, and this is why we wanted to cover both during this session. So I will now hand over to Johanna.
Great, thank you, Lisa. So I will start with what is hopelessness and how does it affect us. So people who feel hopeless experience a lack of hope, optimism, and motivation. They experience a lack of interest and have negative thoughts about the future or future improvements, and a negative view of the self, maybe. Feelings of hopelessness can often lead to an individual to lose interest in important objects, activities, events, or even like the people around them. Someone who has become hopeless may no longer value things that were once important, and the emotion is often associated with a lack of inspiration, as well as a feeling of powerlessness, helplessness, and abandonment, and captivity, oppression, and isolation. So these feelings may become worse dependent on the person's mood or the coping strategy they use or their resilience. So it may not come to you as a surprise that hopelessness is closely linked to poor mental, emotional, and physical health. And often hopelessness can have significant influence on people's behavior, as it may reflect on individuals' negative view of the future. And if one has negative thoughts about the future when seeing everything as negative around them, we may easily imagine that this person will believe that it will stay like this forever, or that it may even get worse. So people affected by this often view their situation in a polarized way, so like in a black and white pattern. And when we start to see the future in this negative way, it usually comes in a form of like thoughts like there's no point, nothing I do makes a difference, I have no hope, or I will never feel better, no one can help me. So there are various thoughts here which you can imagine now. So these negative expectations can lead us to see no point in trying to change it, and lead us to avoid activities and friends at all. So that means hopelessness is experienced in one's thinking, emotion, and behavior, and these components can act like as a vicious cycle. So hopelessness can lead an individual to have thoughts of suicide or suicidal behavior in worst cases. So going next, where does it actually come from? Hopelessness is listed as a symptom of many behavioral and mental health issues, including depression, anxiety, eating disorders, post-traumatic stress, substance misuse or dependency, suicidal ideations. So actually many people who experience hopelessness may also be affected by mental health issues, such as I mentioned, depression. And that does not mean that you cannot have hopelessness without a particular condition. Hopelessness may also arise as a response to loss or to grief, or to a response to major life changes, such as, for example, an illness. So generally, with activation of internal and external resilience and resources, this type of hopelessness may resolve or recedes over time. Yeah. Being helpless is something we may also learn. So roots of hopelessness can lie in personal experiences or attitudes. So the process of learning hopelessness rests upon rigid, absolutized thoughts and feelings and actions that lead to self-enclosure and despair. So no matter the cause, feelings of hopelessness can be devastating, as you might can imagine. Not only does it compromise an individual's sense of well-being and stability, it may also rob the person of the motivation required to utilize available resources or to just reach out for support. So this brings me to the next slide, how we can cope. Before that, I want you to know that most people can find some reason for hope, and even those who have suffered from major life events or just feel they're really, really hopeless, hope can exist alongside those negative emotions, and it's about finding this balance again. And there are ways you can do that. Just because some of us may think change isn't possible, that doesn't make it true at all. All of us have the ability to find hope again, and how we choose to focus our minds and act can help improve our mental and physical health then. So sometimes having the feeling that our hope is like shaky or fragile might point us to a change we need to make, or a goal we need to adjust. So it might also be pointing to an unmet need. In other words, hopelessness isn't a sign that you need to give up. It's a sign that you need to pivot or redirect, which is something everyone can absolutely do. So some steps, for example, would be like future casting. So this is like envisioning a specific future goal in a way that makes it come just alive. If you want to find, for example, a new job, just take pictures that represent the career or the job you would like to have, and create a collage to keep your goal in front and in center of you. So just try to crystallize what you want your future to look like. Then the next step could be to work towards this goal. So if you want to find a specific job, as I mentioned before, as an example, or want to find meaning at work, you may take a course or refresh your CV. And just keep in mind that even small steps count, and be proud and celebrate these small steps and achievements, no matter how small they are. So this is really important to improve your well-being. And it's about like really kind of celebrating every single small step. And the final step is planning for contingencies. So most hopeful people tend to see multiple solutions to a problem, while the hopeless person either don't have a solution at all, or only one for the best case scenario, and come up with just one or two pathways to the target. So here just try to come up with as many ways to overcome those obstacles, and don't be afraid to change them during the pathway. So sometimes things don't go as planned, so try to not ruminate about those things that went wrong or may not work, but try to focus to see them as a kind of like a learning opportunity, which will help you to find a better solution in the end. So if the situation is truly unchangeable, which sometimes happen, maybe there's a way you can change the goal. So if you can't leave your job, for example, your goal becomes to make it more enjoyable and meaningful for you. And if your spouse won't change their way, maybe your goal becomes to change a bit of yourself and your routines and your friendships, so you can meet more of your needs. And if you can't change a life-altering diagnosis, for example, your goal becomes to face it with dignity, self-compassion, acceptance, and strength. So yeah, then then obviously people trying to recover hope in face of trauma often need to build a fourth hope skill, also called re-goaling. So a tragic example would be, for example, a family with a terminally ill child, and after months of going or even years of hoping the child will recover from the illness, they may have to shift to a goal of helping the child live his or her remaining time comfortably and die peacefully. So yeah, as I said, this might be also a way of re-goaling then. Yeah, also another tip would be to focus on what gives you meaning and purpose. So this can be, for example, your connections, so your social network, everyone around you, or a cause or a passion you have. How can you connect to your partner or your friends, family, and colleague? Is there maybe a new way, a more creative way, or a more engaging way? What creativity fostering hobby or interest can you pursue? Is there maybe something you actually liked before and which you want to continue again? Or is there something you knew you want to try? How can you help others, for example? Is there maybe a volunteering opportunity around you or in your community, or maybe even at work? How might you ease someone's suffering? So just, yeah, helping someone can help you to feel better and to have this purpose in your life. Maybe there's like a spirituality which you want to fulfill. This can be like spending time in nature or meditating or just doing something else. So yeah, I mentioned various examples here. Maybe you feel hopeless about the future, or about like something about a year from now or in a month now. So here my tip would be to focus in this very moment, or in this very minute. And yeah, just trying to be gentle with you here is a key. And this can be practiced in meditation, mindfulness sessions. And as I said before, this is a practice and it takes time. So yeah, just be gentle with you and see it as a like learning experience, like a new skill, like learning an instrument, which doesn't happen overnight. Yeah, repeating here myself, remember, change takes time. It's like, as I said before, the skill. There are many steps to that, and it's nothing you will just switch off overnight. An illness like depression doesn't disappear within 1 or 2 changes. Rather, you might need to change your sleep habits. You might need to start moving your body. You might need to take medication, learn CBT, or see a therapist. There are many steps involved here, which you have to acknowledge. And you might need to do these things for some time before you see significant results. And if you can take things one by one and day by day, and appreciating every single step here, and staying patient with yourself, you will gradually begin to see the change. You may also want to learn CBT, as it targets those unhelpful thoughts and assumptions you might experience when being hopeless. As your thoughts like trigger the negative moods, so your physical symptoms and behavior also change. And in order to stop this cycle, CBT will help you to practice how to see the positive things again and to get this balance back. And even if they are clouded by hopelessness, you will also learn to how to avoid falling into the trap of passivity and find activities you can enjoy again. So this might be a good practice for you. So this brings me to the next slide, when to seek help. Many situations that feel or truly are hopeless to an individual suddenly become doable when other people get involved. So this is similar to what Elissa said. Maybe you can ask your loved ones for help or for a different perspective, and maybe you can talk to someone in your community or colleague. It's just about reaching out and activating the people around you, because then you might realize it's actually not hopeless at all. And maybe you can also join an online or in-person support group. There are really, really great ones out there, especially like offered, for example, from Mind. However, hopelessness is not to underestimate, and unfortunately hopelessness is the leading predictor of suicide. If hopelessness is affecting your ability to work, to appreciate things you've always appreciated, or to spend time with your loved ones, your hopelessness might be a sign of mental health issue, and you might want to seek professional support. Also, if you self-harm or have been diagnosed with a mental health issue or taken any self-risk through unpredictable behaviors like taking drugs, you may seek support immediately. Especially if you experience suicidal feelings, intentions, or already have made a plan, you should contact a GP or NHS with immediately. You can also contact Samaritans. They have this confidential 24-hour support available for you. Yeah, but as I mentioned before, everyone can find hope again, and it's about finding the right approach and the right resources to help you feel better again. And yeah, as I mentioned before, everyone can find this path. Yeah, this brings me to the end of our session today, and I hope you found this helpful. So if you have any questions, Elissa and I are happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you, Johanna. Just to recap, loneliness and hopelessness are both feelings that we all experience at some point within our lives, and it can be natural to experience them, but we can find healthy ways to cope with them, and healthy ways to reach out and lean on our social. There's support out there, and as well as things that we can do for ourselves, as Johanna had mentioned,